They went to the West Bank village of Duma, and they firebombed the home of this family, and they killed they actually killed a baby, a 1-year-old baby boy, Ali Dawabshe, sleeping in his crib at night. His house went up in flames, burnt to a crisp. Ali Dawabshe, his 4-year-old older brother, Ahmed, also was burnt from head to toe. There was no certainty. It was, for quite a while, we didn't know if he was going to survive or not. He had burns over 90% of his body. He lay in the hospital suffering for a long time. Eventually, doctors thankfully were able to nurse him back to health. And, today, thankfully, he is back in class. I mean, he's scarred over a large part of his body, but at least, he's back in school. So we can say that. But despite the fact that his 1-year-old baby brother, was burned to death, his father, his mother were all burned to death, the Israeli government has refused to offer compensation. They've refused to pay for his medical expenses, for everything he suffered. If you can imagine that. Now, what does Bezalel Smotrich of the Jewish Home Party, the star legislator of the Jewish Home Party, the deputy speaker of the Knesset, what does he say in response to the murder of these individuals? He says that the murder in Duma, in the village of Duma, with all its severity, is not a terror attack. Period. Terrorism, he says, is only violence carried out by an enemy within the framework of war against us. So in other words, if an Arab person kills a Jewish person, that's terrorism. If a Jewish person kills an Arab, that's not terrorism, according to Bezalel Smotrich. He says those who call it terror are perverting the truth and cheapening the concept of terror. He goes on to say, if Israel had deterred the enemy, we wouldn't have private individuals taking the law into their own hands. This is how sick it gets. So he actually doesn't have a problem with this level of ultra-violence. He doesn't mind burning babies. He just doesn't want it to be privatized. He wants it to be nationalized. He doesn't want vigilante violence. He just wants those babies to be burned by the Israeli army itself, which, as we know, also happens on occasion. Like these boys who were playing soccer on a beach in Gaza when Israeli jets rained missiles down on them, killing them. And I guess Bezalel Smotrich wants to see more of that. So just a little bit of insight into his way of thinking. A few months ago, you may recall there were protests in Jerusalem when Israel established metal detectors at Al-Aqsa, the Muslim shrine in Jerusalem. And people resented this. It's like the one last little bit of territory that Palestinians have some level of autonomy over. So people decided to protest this by refusing to enter through the security gates, and they just had massive pray-ins in the streets of Jerusalem, where they prayed en masse in the middle of the street. So what does Bezalel Smotrich do? He takes a photograph of people praying, refusing to enter the metal detectors, and he takes the photo and he slaps some text on top of it. Yavducha amim, that they shall come bending unto thee, they shall bow down at the soles of thy feet. So this is how he sees Palestinian people, as his slaves. So we're talking about legislation that's coming up around the bend, right? So Smotrich, he holds a conference for his party faction, and at it he announces his decision plan. What's his decision plan? What to do about the Palestinian people. He says we need to come up with a plan, some kind of solution. And his decision plan goes, I don't call it that, I call it the ABC plan, the Apartheid Bribe Cleanse Plan. Now, what does that mean? This is the crux of his proposal. He says, we're going to go to the Palestinian people and we're going to say, first off, bribe. If you agree to leave the country and never come back, we'll give you a chunk of change. Here's money, leave Palestine. You take that offer? Great, problem solved. You don't? You want to stay in the land? Okay, we move to the next option. After bribe comes apartheid. You don't want to take the bribe? You want to stay in the land? Okay, fine, but understand that you're going to be living under apartheid. No more, none of this temporary occupation. I mean, we've been going over 50 years of Israel's occupation of the West Bank. No one in their right mind thinks it's temporary anymore. But let's say now Bezalel Smotrich is going to openly admit it and say it outright. This is permanent. You will have a lower status by law. Okay? If you want to stay in the country, these are the conditions you have to accept. You don't want a bribe, you don't agree to leave the country, you don't agree to have a lower status, stay in the country with a lower status, then the next option is cleansing, that we'll ethnically cleanse you by force. We will force you out of the country, physically. So this is the ABC plan. And again, just so you don't think it's some kind of one-off, that he did this out of his own accord and didn't have any support. No, at that conference where he announced the plan publicly, Netanyahu himself sent a video message greeting everyone there, effectively endorsing it. So this is the kind of discourse we see coming from the government, now openly flirting with ethnic cleansing.